She moved through the SEAL training compound unnoticed. Just the nurse, the one they barely acknowledged, the one they explained combat medicine to despite her Harvard degree, the one they told to stick to bandages. Until that day when alarms blared and an armed intruder breached the perimeter. In the chaos that followed, she moved without hesitation. What happened next left hardened warriors frozen in disbelief, questioning everything they thought they knew. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, consider subscribing for more untold tales of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight. Lieutenant Zephyra Callan's morning ritual never varied. The soft click of the infirmary door locking behind her, the methodical arrangement of gauze, antiseptic, and suture kits, the quiet assessment of her domain, a sterile sanctuary amid the controlled chaos of SEAL training. Outside, Master Chief Thaddeus Breckenridge's voice carried across the compound. "Move like you mean it, recruits. The enemy will not wait while you catch your breath." Zephyra glanced through the window, watching the struggling line of SEAL candidates. Her fingers automatically organized medication vials by priority as her eyes tracked their movements, calculating exertion levels, identifying the ones who would likely visit her by afternoon. The infirmary door banged open. Two instructors half-carried a recruit with a bleeding gash across his forehead. "Got a bleeder for you, Doc," said Lieutenant Commander Decker, depositing the young man on the examination table. Ramos here thought the obstacle course was optional. Zephyra nodded, already reaching for supplies. "I have got him." "Try not to coddle him too much," Decker added with a smirk. "This is not summer camp." She did not respond, just moved with quiet efficiency. Within minutes, she had cleaned, assessed, and begun suturing the wound. "That is a nice, clean technique, ma'am," Ramos said, watching her work. "Thank you." Her voice was soft but precise, like everything else about her. "Where did you learn to suture like that? Those are perfect." A barely perceptible pause in her rhythm. "Medical school." "Harvard Medical School," Ramos said, reading her framed credentials on the wall. "Impressive." Her only response was a slight nod as she finished the final stitch. Later that morning, Master Chief Breckenridge arrived for his mandatory physical. He sat impatiently as Zephyra checked his vitals. "Blood pressure is elevated," she noted. "It is always elevated during selection. These recruits are softer every year." Zephyr made a note in his chart. "Any chest pain? Dizziness?" "I am fine." He rolled down his sleeve. "Listen, Doc, we have got a VIP coming through tomorrow. Admiral Ravenscroft. The brass want everyone looking sharp." "I will make sure the infirmary is presentable." The Master Chief chuckled. "Do not worry about impressing anyone. Just keep the bandages coming when we need them." He stood to leave, then paused. "By the way, there was an incident with the comm system yesterday. Probably nothing, but keep an eye out for anything unusual." "What kind of incident?" "Nothing for you to worry about," he said, already moving toward the door. "With all due respect, ma'am, you would not understand what it takes to secure a compound like this." Zephyra simply nodded. "Of course, Master Chief." After he left, she stood motionless for several seconds. Then she moved to the window and scanned the perimeter with an intensity that would have surprised anyone who knew her only as just the nurse. The afternoon brought scorching heat and a steady stream of dehydration cases. Zephyra moved efficiently through the compound, delivering medication to various training zones. Near the shooting range, she paused, watching a female recruit struggling under the critical gaze of her instructors. The woman, Ensign Ren Maravalle, according to her name tag, was technically proficient, but clearly rattled by the constant scrutiny. "Women do not belong in the teams," muttered an instructor standing nearby, not bothering to lower his voice. "Just a distraction." Zephyra's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. She continued her rounds, navigating the compound with unusual awareness, noting every entrance, exit, and blind spot. When she returned to the infirmary, Ensign Maravalle was waiting, a cut on her hand needing attention. "It is nothing," Maravalle said, embarrassed. "Caught it on some equipment." Zephyra cleaned the wound in silence. "They do not think women belong here," Maravalle finally said, her voice barely audible. Zephyra's hands never paused in their work. Sometimes the strongest people are not the ones making all the noise. "Does it ever get easier?" Maravalle asked. Before Zephyra could answer, commotion erupted outside. Admiral Ravenscroft had arrived a day early, his security detail scanning the area with professional vigilance. Zephyra watched through the window, her gaze lingering on one of the security officers whose stance seemed wrong. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she noted other anomalies, misaligned radio frequencies, unusual patrol patterns, a security camera tilted 2 degrees from its usual position. Later, she approached the security office. "Excuse me, Lieutenant, I have noticed some irregularities in the perimeter surveillance." The officer barely glanced up. "Ma'am, with all respect, this is a SEAL facility. Leave security to the professionals." She nodded politely and withdrew. But instead of returning to the infirmary, she took a circuitous route around the compound, methodically checking sightlines and access points. To anyone watching, she was simply a medical officer making her rounds. No one noticed how her eyes cataloged every detail, how her hand occasionally brushed against her hip where a sidearm would normally be holstered. No one noticed, because she was just the nurse. Dawn broke over the training compound with muted gold light. Zephyra arrived earlier than usual, her routine unchanged despite the tension vibrating through her nerves. Something was wrong. She had felt it yesterday, seen the signs that others missed. Admiral Ravenscroft's unscheduled early arrival, the misaligned security protocols, the communications incident that no one would explain. In the quiet of the infirmary, she methodically checked supplies, but her mind was elsewhere, calculating possibilities, assessing risks. When she opened the cabinet beneath the sink, she paused, then reached to the far back, retrieving a small case hidden behind cleaning supplies. She opened it briefly. Inside lay specialized instruments that had nothing to do with medicine, then closed and replaced it, just in case. Outside, the compound stirred to life. SEAL candidates assembled for morning physical training while instructors barked orders. Zephyra watched through the window, her eyes constantly moving, scanning for anomalies. Master Chief Breckenridge appeared at her door. "Morning, Doc. Got any coffee made?" She poured him a cup without comment. "Admiral is doing his inspection today," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Headquarters is buzzing about something. Increased chatter, they say." He sipped the coffee. "Nothing for medical to worry about, though." "Of course," she replied evenly. After he left, Zephyra made her way to the communications building, carrying a box of supplies. The guard nodded her through without checking the contents. Inside, she delivered medication to the comm officer, then casually glanced at the security monitors. "Everything quiet today?" she asked. "All normal," the officer replied, barely looking up. "Thanks for the aspirin." Zephyra nodded and left, but her expression had tightened. The Southwest camera feed was on a loop, a subtle difference only someone with specialized training would notice. The same training she was not supposed to have. By afternoon, the compound was busy with the Admiral's inspection. Security details positioned themselves at key points while senior officers led the delegation through training areas. Zephyra kept to her duties, moving between stations with medical supplies, always watching. At the shooting range, she paused near Ensign Marival, who was performing marksman drills. The young woman's shots were tight, centered. "Much better today," Zephyra commented quietly. Marival smiled, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you, ma'am." As they spoke, a weapons instructor approached, nodding respectfully to Zephyra before turning to Marival. "Not bad, Ensign, but your rifle assembly time is still too slow." "Yes, sir." He gestured to the disassembled weapon on the table. "Let us see it again." Marival began the process, her movements precise but cautious. The instructor sighed. "You are thinking too much. It should be muscle memory by now." Without thinking, Zephyra interjected. "The firing pin assembly is backward." Both turned to her in surprise. "The firing pin," she repeated, pointing. "It is oriented incorrectly. That is why the action is sticking." The instructor examined the piece, his expression shifting from skepticism to grudging respect. "She is right." He looked at Zephyra curiously. "You know weapons systems?" She blinked, realizing her mistake. "My brother was a Marine," she said smoothly. "I picked up a few things." Before he could question further, alarms blared across the compound. Emergency lights flashed as a voice over the loudspeaker announced, "Security breach, Sector 7. All personnel implement lockdown procedures." Chaos erupted. Recruits scrambled for position while instructors shouted contradicting orders. Through the confusion, Zephyra remained perfectly still, her eyes tracking movement at the perimeter where a figure in tactical gear had breached the inner fence. The man moved with military precision, heading directly toward the command center where Admiral Ravenscroft was located. Security personnel had spotted him, but were hampered by communication failures, their radios emitting only static. Zephyra assessed the situation in seconds. The intruder's approach, the security response time, the distance to the command tent. Without hesitation, she set down her medical bag, removed her lab coat, and began moving. No one noticed her at first. She was background noise, just the nurse navigating another emergency. But her movements had changed, becoming fluid, economical, lethal. She covered ground with astonishing speed, intercepting the intruder's path near the command tent. The man saw her too late. He raised his weapon, but Zephyra was already inside his guard. Her first strike targeted his brachial plexus. The second swept his legs. The third disarmed him with a technique taught only to elite special operators. The entire sequence took less than 4 seconds. The rifle clattered to the ground. The intruder collapsed, immobilized. Complete silence fell over the yard. Dozens of witnesses, instructors, recruits, senior officers stood frozen in disbelief. Master Chief Breckenridge's mouth hung open in shock. "Who is she?" someone whispered. Before anyone could move, Zephyra's head snapped up. Her eyes locked onto a second intruder approaching from the east. Without hesitation, she reached into her pocket, withdrew a surgical scalpel, and threw it with impossible precision. The blade pinned the man's sleeve to a wooden post, immobilizing his gun arm. Security teams finally arrived, surrounding both intruders with weapons drawn. Admiral Ravenscroft emerged from the command tent, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the scene. His eyes settled on Zephyra, who stood calmly amid the chaos, her posture now unmistakably military. "At ease, Commander," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard. Murmurs spread through the crowd. "Commander?" The Admiral approached Zephyra, stopping a respectful distance away. "Lieutenant Commander Zephyra Callan, Ghost Team 6, 8 years deep cover in Sevastopol, 37 confirmed operations, Silver Star recipient." He paused. "Thought you retired." Zephyra straightened, the nurse persona falling away completely. "Just changed assignments, sir." Understanding dawned on the faces around them. The SEAL instructors exchanged stunned glances. The woman they had dismissed, patronized, and overlooked was something else entirely, something they had never imagined. Master Chief Breckenridge stepped forward, his weathered face registering shock, then recognition, and finally profound respect. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand in a perfect military salute. One by one, every SEAL and instructor followed suit. Zephyra Callan sat straight-backed in her dress blues, the uniform adorned with rows of commendation ribbons that told a story few had been privileged to hear. Around the conference table, senior intelligence officers and special operations commanders studied the briefing materials in silence. Admiral Ravenscroft entered, and everyone stood. "Be seated," he said, taking his place at the head of the table. Yesterday's breach was not an isolated incident. It was a probing action, part of a coordinated intelligence operation targeting our special warfare programs. He nodded to Zephyra. Commander Callan's presence at the training facility was not accidental. 3 years ago, we received intelligence suggesting foreign operatives had infiltrated our special operations training pipeline. Rather than initiating a potentially compromising investigation, we placed our own deep cover asset. Zephyra picked up seamlessly. The intruders yesterday were Russian military intelligence, Spetsnaz operators working under diplomatic cover. Their objective was not an attack but data collection. They have been mapping our training protocols, identifying candidates for potential recruitment. She activated a display showing surveillance images. We have identified 3 compromised individuals within Naval Special Warfare Group, 2 instructors and 1 support staff. The breach yesterday was meant to test our response protocols, but it has accelerated our timeline. Which brings us to why you are all here, Admiral Ravenscroft continued. Commander Callan's cover is now blown, but the operation continues. We have been compromised. We need to reconstitute Ghost Team 6. Murmurs spread around the table. Ghost Team 6, the classified all-female special operations unit that officially did not exist, had been disbanded years ago, or so everyone thought. Questions? The Admiral asked. A senior commander spoke up. With respect, sir, reconstituting an entire unit takes time we may not have. That is why we never fully disbanded, Zephyra replied calmly. My team has been in place all along. Different roles, different locations, but always ready. The briefing continued for another hour, detailing the counterintelligence operation now being launched. When it concluded, the room cleared except for Zephyra and the Admiral. You have done exemplary work, Commander, Ravenscroft said. 3 years maintaining deep cover is not easy. The hardest part was watching the training mistakes, she replied with the ghost of a smile. So many efficiency opportunities missed. Well, the Admiral said, I do not think that will be a problem anymore. The training facility had transformed overnight. Security protocols tightened, personnel reassigned, and at the center of it all, Zephyra Callan moved with a new openness. She still maintained her medical duties, but now she walked with the unmistakable authority of a senior officer. In the mess hall, conversation stopped when she entered. Instructors who had previously dismissed her now stood straighter, offering respectful nods. Recruits watched in fascination, already exchanging whispered stories about her takedown of the intruders, stories growing more elaborate with each retelling. Master Chief Breckenridge approached her table, hesitating uncharacteristically before speaking. Commander, may I join you? She gestured to the empty seat. Of course, Master Chief. He sat, uncomfortable silence stretching between them. Finally, he cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, Commander. No apologies necessary, she replied evenly. Anonymity was the mission. Still, he insisted, some of the things I said were exactly what I needed to maintain cover, she finished for him. You did your job, I did mine. He nodded, relief visible in his weathered face. The recruits are asking about you, especially the women. At a nearby table, Ensign Maravale sat with other female candidates, stealing glances in their direction. I think they could use some specialized training, Zephyra suggested, if the command approves. I will make it happen, Breckenridge promised. Later that afternoon, Zephyra led a small group of candidates through advanced combat techniques not typically taught at this stage of training. She moved with fluid precision, demonstrating moves that had taken years to master. The difference between good and great is not strength, she explained, executing a takedown that left a 200-pound instructor flat on his back. It is understanding leverage, momentum, and psychology. The candidates watched in awe, none more attentive than Ensign Maravale. After the session, Maraval approached hesitantly. Commander, may I ask you something? Zephyra nodded. How did you do it? Maintain your cover for so long without anyone suspecting? People see what they expect to see, Zephyra answered. A medical officer is not a threat. A woman is not a weapon. Their assumptions became my camouflage. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object, her naval officer's insignia. She pressed it into Maraval's hand. Sometimes the best warriors are the ones no one sees coming. The day's final exercise unfolded on the beach as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Recruits tackled the infamous obstacle course that had defeated so many before them. Zephyra stood at a distance, watching Ensign Maravale attack the course with newfound determination. Behind her, footsteps approached in the sand. Impressive transformation, Admiral Ravenscroft commented, coming to stand beside her. The whole compound is buzzing. They will settle down, she replied. Tomorrow we begin real work. Your team arrives at 0600, operational planning by 0800. He paused. Are you ready to step back into the field, Commander? 3 years is a long time to play a role. Zephyra's eyes tracked Maraval as she conquered the final obstacle, the same one she had failed yesterday. I never stopped being who I am, sir. I just let people see what they wanted to see. The Admiral nodded. Well, now they are seeing clearly, and watching closely. As if to emphasize his point, a group of instructors had gathered nearby, their body language radiating new respect as they observed her. Among them stood Master Chief Breckenridge, who was speaking to a visiting officer. Sir, I would trust the commander with my life, his voice carried on the evening air. In fact, I already have. Zephyra allowed herself a small smile as she watched Maraval reach the finish line, exhausted but triumphant. The young ensign caught her eye and straightened, offering a perfect salute. Zephyra returned it crisply, then turned to walk along the shoreline, her silhouette stark against the setting sun. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new dangers. But for now, she savored this moment, the feeling of finally being seen, not as just the nurse, but as exactly who she was. The next morning arrived with military precision. At 0600 hours, a transport plane touched down on the facility's airstrip. Zafira stood waiting as the rear ramp descended and 5 women emerged, each carrying a standard-issue duffel bag, each moving with the unmistakable economy of movement that marked special operators. "Ghost Team 6, Master Chief Breckenridge whispered to the small group of instructors gathered nearby. "I thought they were just a rumor." Zafira stepped forward to meet the first woman, a tall, bronze-skinned lieutenant commander with sharp eyes and a scar running along her jawline. "Commander Thorne," Zafira said, exchanging a crisp salute. "Commander Callan," the woman replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Tired of playing nurse?" It had its moments. The rest of the team lined up, Lieutenants Quincy, Nix, Eastwood, and Valor, each with their own cover story, each with their own specialized skills. Within minutes, they were escorted to a secure facility on the far side of the compound, a building that most SEAL instructors did not know existed. By year 0800, operational planning was underway. The room hummed with focused energy as Zafira outlined the mission parameters. "Our primary objective is to identify and neutralize the foreign intelligence network that has compromised our training protocols," she explained, bringing up schematics on the main display. "We have confirmed 3 infiltrators, but they are likely just assets of a larger operation." Lieutenant Quincy, the team's intelligence specialist, pulled up personnel files. "Preliminary analysis suggests the operation extends beyond this facility. Similar anomalies have been detected at Bud's training in Coronado and Marine Special Operations in Lejeune. Which means this is not just about stealing training methods," Zafira concluded. "They are targeting the next generation of special operators for potential recruitment or compromise." The planning continued throughout the morning, with Admiral Ravenscroft joining periodically to provide higher-level authorization. By midday, Ghost Team 6 had established their operational framework, each member assigned specific targets and intelligence-gathering objectives. "Commander Callan will maintain her medical officer cover as much as possible," Admiral Ravenscroft informed them during the final briefing. "The rest of you will integrate into various support roles throughout the facility. Your presence has been authorized, but your mission remains classified even to senior instructors." As the team dispersed to their assignments, Zafira found herself alone with Commander Thorne, her second-in-command and oldest friend in the service. "3 years undercover," Thorne said, shaking her head. "That is a long time to play small." "It had its advantages," Zafira replied. "People tell the nurse things they would never tell an operator. They let their guard down. And now? Now they are watching every move I make." She pulled up surveillance footage from around the compound. Several instructors could be seen gathering in small groups, glancing repeatedly toward the medical building. "Word spreads fast." "It changes the operational environment," Thorne agreed. "But it might also flush out our targets. Nothing makes a mole nervous like a counterintelligence officer suddenly appearing in their midst." "Exactly," Zafira smiled. "By tonight, everyone on this base will know who I really am, or at least who they think I am. Let us see who gets nervous." Throughout the afternoon, Zafira resumed her medical duties, aware of the shifting dynamics around her. Where instructors had once been dismissive, they were now watchful, curious, perhaps even intimidated. She used their curiosity to her advantage, noting who asked questions and, more importantly, who suddenly avoided her altogether. By evening, she had identified 2 additional personnel whose behavior suggested they might be compromised, a communications specialist and a perimeter security guard. Neither was on their original list of suspects. At the day's final staff meeting, she watched them carefully, noting how the communications specialist avoided eye contact while the security guard seemed overly interested in her presence. After the meeting, Master Chief Breckenridge fell into step beside her as she walked toward the medical building. "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" "Always, Master Chief." "The men are curious," he said carefully. "About Ghost Team 6, about you. There are rumors flying everywhere." "What kind of rumors?" "That you were part of a failed experimental program, that your unit was disbanded because it did not work in real combat conditions." He hesitated. "Some of the older instructors remember the political battles when the program was first proposed. They say it was shut down for good reasons." Zafira stopped walking, turning to face him directly. Do you believe that, Master Chief? He met her gaze steadily. 3 years you were here. 3 years I watched you work. Not once did I suspect you were anything other than a competent medical officer. That is either the sign of excellent training or proof the program should have continued. She nodded, appreciating his honesty. The program never ended, Master Chief. It just went deeper underground. Ghost Team 6 has conducted 37 major operations in the past decade, all classified, all successful. Why tell me this now? Because I need your help, she replied simply. Your instructors respect you. They will follow your lead. If you treat my team with the same professional courtesy you would extend to any special operations unit, they will too. Breckenridge straightened. You will have it, Commander, and anything else you need for your mission. Thank you, Master Chief. She started walking again, then paused. By the way, when did you first suspect I might be more than just a nurse? A rare smile crossed his weathered face. The day you arrived. Your boots. My boots? Standard issue Naval Medical Corps footwear, but the laces were tied with an operator's knot. The kind that never comes loose, even under extreme stress. Not something they teach in medical school. Zafira laughed softly. All this time, undone by my bootlaces. Only to someone who knew what to look for, he assured her. And I did not know what it meant until yesterday. As night fell over the compound, Zafira returned to the secure facility where her team had established their command center. Lieutenant Quincy had mapped all digital communications from the base over the past 6 months, identifying unusual patterns that suggested covert transmissions. We have got a problem, Commander, Quincy reported. The security breach yesterday triggered a significant increase in encrypted communications from multiple points on the base. Our suspects are talking to someone, and they are talking a lot. Can you crack the encryption? Working on it, but these are sophisticated protocols. Whoever they are working for has serious technical resources. Zafira studied the communications map. They know we are onto them. We need to accelerate our timeline. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Ravenscroft, briefing him on the latest developments. His response was immediate and clear. You have full operational authority, Commander. Do whatever is necessary to secure the facility and neutralize the threat. Zafira turned to her team. As of now, we are shifting to active counterintelligence operations. Commander Thorne, coordinate with base security to establish additional surveillance on our primary suspects. Lieutenant Nix, I want communication jammers in place by 0200. Lieutenant Valor, prepare for potential physical intervention if targets attempt to flee. The women moved with practiced efficiency, each understanding their role in the complex operation about to unfold. This was what they had trained for, what they excelled at, the invisible work of securing the nation's most sensitive military assets. As her team deployed, Zafira stood at the command center window, looking out over the darkened compound. For 3 years, she had walked these grounds as someone else, hiding her capabilities, restraining her instincts, always in the background. Tomorrow, Ghost Team 6 would move into the open, not as an experimental program or a political talking point, but as what they had always been, one of the most effective special operations units in the military. The nurse was gone. The commander had returned. The compound slept, or pretended to. At 0200 hours, Lieutenant Nix activated the communication jammers, creating a digital dome over the facility. Any unauthorized transmissions would now be blocked, forcing their targets to either go silent or attempt more desperate means of contact. Zafira watched from the command center as thermal imaging showed movement across the base. Most personnel remained in their quarters, but 3 heat signatures moved with purpose toward the communications building. We have got activity, she said into her secure comm link. Commander Thorne, do you have visual? Affirmative, came the quiet response. Communications Specialist Torres and 2 unidentified personnel. They appear to be attempting to access the satellite uplink. As predicted, Zafira noted. Lieutenant Valor, position your team for intercept, but hold until my command. Let us see what they do when they discover the jammers. Through night vision displays, they watched as Torres and his companions entered the communications building. Minutes later, they emerged, body language signaling agitation. They are splitting up, Thorne reported. Torres is heading toward the server room. The others are moving toward the perimeter. They are looking for workarounds, Zafira concluded. Lieutenant Quincy, are you tracking their devices? Yes, Commander. Torres is attempting to establish a direct fiber connection to bypass our jammers. The others appear to be preparing a physical dead drop. Zafira made her decision. Lieutenant Valor, take Torres. Commander Thorne, intercept the couriers. Lieutenant Eastwood, prepare for evidence collection. Lieutenant Nix, maintain jamming protocols. Ghost Team 6 moved with silent efficiency. Lieutenant Valor's team surrounded the server room while Commander Thorne tracked the couriers to the eastern perimeter. Within minutes, all 3 suspects were in custody, separated for interrogation. Zafira chose to handle Torres personally. The communications specialist sat rigid in the secure interview room, defiance written across his features. "You have made a serious mistake, Commander," he said as she entered. "I am filing a formal complaint about this treatment." She placed a file on the table between them. "Specialist Torres, we have monitored your unauthorized communications for the past 6 hours. We have tracked your movements through restricted areas, and we have recovered the intelligence package you prepared for your handlers." His expression did not change, but his pulse visibly quickened at his throat. "I have no idea what you are talking about." Zafira opened the file, revealing photographs of Torres meeting with known foreign intelligence operatives. "Sevastopol, 6 months ago. Vienna, during your leave last spring. Hong Kong in December." His composure cracked slightly. "Those were authorized contacts. Check with naval intelligence." "I did," she replied calmly. "They have never heard of your operation. Neither has the CIA, NSA, or any other agency with legitimate authority to run intelligence operations on American soil." She leaned forward. "You are working for Russian military intelligence. You have been for at least 3 years. The question is not whether you will be convicted of espionage, but how many of your colleagues will go down with you." Torres maintained his cover for another 40 minutes before finally breaking. By dawn, he had provided names of 2 additional infiltrators within the training command, as well as details of the foreign intelligence operation targeting elite military training facilities across the country. As the sun rose over the compound, Zafira briefed Admiral Ravenscroft on their findings. "The operation was more extensive than we initially believed," she reported. "They were not just gathering intelligence on our training methods. They were identifying candidates who could be compromised later in their careers, once they had access to more sensitive operations." The Admiral reviewed the preliminary reports. "Excellent work, Commander. The Counterintelligence Division will take custody of the prisoners for further interrogation. Your team has accomplished its primary objective." "Sir, with respect, our mission is not complete," Zafira countered. "Torres has given us information about similar operations at 3 other special warfare training facilities. Ghost Team 6 is uniquely positioned to extend this operation." Ravenscroft studied her for a moment. "You want to take your team back into the field?" "It is what we do best, sir." He nodded slowly. "Draw up the operational parameters. You will have full support." As the Admiral departed, Commander Thorne joined Zafira in the command center. "Back to the shadows?" "Not entirely," Zafira replied. "Our cover is blown, but that gives us new operational flexibility. We can move more openly now, at least within military channels." "The team is ready," Thorne assured her. "Valor is already complaining about having to wear a uniform again instead of scrubs." Zafira smiled. "Tell her I spent 3 years taking blood pressure readings and handing out aspirin. She can manage a few days in proper uniform." Later that morning, as Zafira prepared for Ghost Team 6's departure, Master Chief Breckenridge requested a meeting. She found him waiting outside the medical building, which had been her domain for so long. "I hear you are shipping out," he said without preamble. "This afternoon. There are other facilities that need our attention." He nodded, digesting this. "The recruits were asking about you. Word travels fast." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That some of the best operators work in the shadows. That recognition is not the point of service." She appreciated his discretion. "Thank you, Master Chief." "There is something else," he added. "Ensign Marival has submitted a formal request for special operations training. She cited your example as inspiration." Zafira was not surprised. She had seen the potential in the young officer from the beginning. She has the right temperament, the determination. "I will be recommending her," Breckenridge confirmed, "along with 3 other female candidates who previously hesitated to apply." "Things change quickly," Zafira observed. "Some things were long overdue for change." The Master Chief extended his hand. It has been an honor serving with you, Commander, even when I did not know who you really were. She shook his hand firmly. The honor was mine, Master Chief. As she turned to leave, he added, They will not forget you here. The story is already becoming legend. Zephyra paused. What story is that? The nurse who took down armed intruders without breaking a sweat. The woman who had been hiding in plain sight for years. The commander who changed how we see everything. She considered this, then said simply, Perhaps the most important part of the story is not what I did, but what happens next. What changes because of it. He nodded in understanding. Safe hunting, Commander. The final hours at the facility passed quickly. Ghost Team 6 prepared for deployment while intelligence officers secured the captured assets. By mid-afternoon, Zephyra found herself at the airstrip, her team loading equipment onto a waiting transport. As they worked, she noticed a group of SEAL candidates observing from a distance, Ensign Maravale among them. After a moment's consideration, Zephyra walked over to them. Ma'am, they acknowledged in unison, standing straighter as she approached. At ease, she said. I understand you all have questions. Maraval spoke first. Is it true you were undercover here for 3 years? Yes. And no one suspected? Zephyra glanced back at Master Chief Breckenridge, who was supervising the loading operation. Almost no one. Another candidate stepped forward. If Ghost Team 6 is real, are there other units like yours? That information is classified, she replied, then added, but the military is full of specialized units that operate outside conventional structures. The uniforms and titles do not always tell the whole story. How do we get considered for special operations? Asked a third candidate, a woman whose determined expression reminded Zephyra of herself years ago. Excellence, Zephyra said simply. Consistent, unapologetic excellence. The kind that cannot be ignored or dismissed, no matter who you are or what assumptions people make about you. She looked at each of them in turn. The most effective operators are not always the loudest or the most visible. Sometimes they are the ones quietly mastering their skills, watching and learning while others talk. Remember that. As she returned to the transport, Lieutenant Eastwood fell into step beside her. Recruiting already, Commander? Planting seeds, Zephyra corrected. The next generation needs to know what is possible. The team completed their preparations, and as the sun began its descent, they boarded the transport. From her window, Zephyra watched the training facility recede below them. For 3 years, it had been her cover, her mission, her world. Now it was just another completed operation, another chapter in the classified history of Ghost Team 6. But something had changed. The secret was out, at least in part. The story would spread through military channels, growing and transforming with each retelling. The nurse who was more than she seemed, the commander who had hidden among them, the team that operated in shadows. She thought of Ensign Maravale and the others watching them depart, imagining the possibilities suddenly visible to them. Perhaps that was the most important outcome of her blown cover, not the captured spies or the intelligence gathered, but the doors opened for those who would follow. Commander Thorne interrupted her thoughts. Operational planning in 5 minutes, Commander. We need to prepare for infiltration at Coronado. Zephyra nodded, setting aside reflection for action. I will be right there. As the aircraft banked east, she allowed herself one final glance at the compound below. Master Chief Breckenridge stood at attention on the tarmac, a solitary figure offering a perfect salute to the departing aircraft. She returned it, though he could not see her, a gesture of respect between professionals who understood the true meaning of service. Then she turned away, focusing on the mission ahead. Ghost Team 6 had work to do, other facilities to secure, other infiltrators to find. The quiet, precise work of protecting the nation's most valuable military assets would continue, much of it unrecognized, most of it uncelebrated. And that was exactly as it should be. 1 month later, Ensign Ren Maravale stood at attention before the selection board, her application for special operations training under review. The panel of senior officers studied her record in silence. Your performance metrics are impressive, Ensign, said the chairwoman finally. But special operations requires more than physical capability. It requires judgment, adaptability, and absolute commitment. I understand, ma'am. Do you? The chairwoman leaned forward. Why should we select you for this program? Maraval did not hesitate. Because I see what others miss. Because I persist when others quit. Because I understand that true strength is not always visible until the moment it is needed most. The panel exchanged glances, recognizing the influence behind her words. "One last question, Ensign," said the chairwoman. "We understand you witnessed the incident with Commander Callan last month. What did you learn from that experience?" Marivalle stood straighter. "I learned that assumptions are dangerous, ma'am, that excellence can hide in plain sight, that the most effective operators are not always the ones everyone is watching." After a brief deliberation, the chairwoman delivered their decision. "Congratulations, Ensign Marivalle. Report for Special Operations Training at 0600 tomorrow." As Marivalle exited the room, she found Master Chief Breckenridge waiting in the corridor. "Congratulations, Ensign." "Thank you, Master Chief." She hesitated, then asked, "Have you heard anything about Commander Callan, where she is now?" "That information is classified," he replied, then added with the ghost of a smile, "But wherever she is, I suspect she would be proud of what her time here set in motion." Across the country, in a nondescript office building near Langley, Zephyra Callan reviewed operational reports from Ghost Team 6's latest mission. The counterintelligence operation had expanded, uncovering foreign infiltration attempts at 7 military training facilities. 22 intelligence assets had been identified and neutralized, their handlers tracked and monitored. Admiral Ravenscroft entered without knocking, dropping a file on her desk. "Congratulations, Commander. The Joint Chiefs have officially recognized Ghost Team 6 as a permanent special operations unit under your command. Your budget has been tripled." She raised an eyebrow. "Quite a change from being the classified program no one would acknowledge." "Results speak for themselves," he replied. "The intelligence community is calling this the most successful counter-espionage operation in a decade." "And the public story?" "Remains classified, of course, though within military channels certain details have been authorized for limited distribution." She understood the implications. The program would remain in the shadows, but not in darkness. Its existence would be known to those who needed to know, its accomplishments recognized within the community it served. "There is one more thing," the Admiral added. "Applications for female special operations training have increased 70% across all branches in the past month." Zephyra allowed herself a small smile. "Interesting correlation." "Indeed." Ravenscroft headed for the door, then paused. "The selection board approved Ensign Marivalle this morning. She starts training tomorrow." After he left, Zephyra stood at the window of her office, watching the city below. People moved through their daily lives, unaware of the shadows that protected them, the operators who moved silently through the world, securing the barriers between peace and chaos. She thought of Marivalle and the others who would follow, inspired by a story they had glimpsed but could never fully know. The nurse who became a commander, the woman everyone underestimated, the operator who had hidden in plain sight until the moment her skills were needed most. Perhaps that was legacy enough, not recognition or acclaim, but possibility. The doors opened for those who would follow, the paths cleared for the next generation of shadows. Zephyra returned to her desk, opening the file containing Ghost Team 6's next mission parameters. Tomorrow they would deploy again, moving through the world unnoticed until the moment they were needed. Always ready, always watching, always there. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Someone whose quiet strength changed everything around them without a word. Share your story in the comments below. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story touched you, consider subscribing for more tales of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight, and she had work to do.